you can see us.
Really? Yeah, no. Okay, good morning, everyone. We'll start with Kaylee.
Start with a little introduction and then Jason follow.
Grace Brimelow is a triathlete. She has Cri du Chat syndrome like lots of us, and she is going to tell us a bit about herself. Her mom, Simone, is also going to talk to us. They are in Queensland.
Thank you, Kaylee. Okay. Grace Brimelow is an 18-year-old para-triathlete, a swimmer from the Sunshine Coast, and as of April 2023, she has been representing Australia in para-triathlon. She is also a member of the Australian Flippers squad. Grace is about to complete Year 12 at Sunshine Coast Grammar School. Grace is a happy, content, determined and hard-working young woman. She enjoys all sport and also has a keen interest in the creative industries, including film and TV, music and acting. She would like to go to university and study psychology. Those interests have taken a backseat to sport for the moment, so she can pursue her dream as a Paralympian. A Sunshine Coast local, Grace was born in Nambour and now lives in Mons. She started swimming lessons at the age of 4 months and little athletics when she was 5. Grace takes part in able-bodied races whenever she can, while seeking recognition as a para-athlete. Grace has been the recipient of a scholarship at scholarship at Sunshine Coast Grammar since 2023, and in 2023 she was granted a Hancock prospecting scholarship by Swimming Queensland, the only female para scholarship awarded and one of only 2 para scholarships in total. The Dylan Alcock Foundation have supported Grace with the purchase of a new bike in late 2023, which helped her campaign to get to the Paralympics in 2024. She is a member of the Dylan Alcock Nike Elite Academy and was named Emerging Athlete of the Year in 2024 with Oz Triathlon. She is currently preparing to represent Australia in triathlon in the World Championships in Wollongong in 2 weeks' time, I believe that is. Sitting with Grace is Grace's mum, Simone Pierce. Her most common title now is Grace's mum. Simone has been working at University of the Sunshine Coast in the law discipline and law lecturer since 2024. Before this, for just short of 22 years, she practiced law and was a partner of a prominent local law firm for the last 15 of those years. Simone researches and advocates in the discrimination of people with a disability in sport, particularly advocating for better inclusion. Simone's PhD was entitled Towards Guidelines for the Inclusion of Children with Disability in Sports. The other area of sports law that Simone has considerable expertise in is that of governance. Simone has been involved in numerous governance reviews and restructures and advised in relation to many constitutions. Simone is currently a director of the Sunshine Coast 2032 Limited and is director of Disability Sports Australia. She is the general editor of the LexisNexis Sports Law Bulletin, and she chairs Netball Queensland Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee. Of course, Simone's most prominent role is that of mum to Grace and her brother Jude. I'd now like to introduce the two of them to talk to you. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having us this morning. We are really excited to be here, and we're really sorry that we can't be here in person, but as you heard, Grace is in the midst of training for a world championship that's in 2 weeks' time. So taking a couple of days out of training was just a little bit too much. So we had to opt for doing it like this. So I hope this is okay and that everybody can see and hear us okay. Is everybody hear us? If you can just give me a wave. Yep. Excellent. So I'm going to go first. As was said, I am going to talk to you about what has become my greatest role, and that is being Grace's mum. Grace is then going to talk to you about potentially her greatest role so far, which is how she became a Paralympian, of which she's really proud. I'm going to talk to you about primarily the first 7 years of Grace's life, because it's a story I tell that seems to have some impact, and it resonates with people, and hopefully a lot of people in the room in the story that I tell, because for us, Grace wasn't diagnosed with Cri du Chat syndrome until she was 6.5. So I spent 6.5 years trying to work out what it was that Grace was experiencing and how I could help her. So it's a kind of an interesting story. As you heard, when Grace was born, I was practicing law and I was a partner in a law firm. So I was working some big hours, and I thought I was pretty important and doing lots of busy things in law. And then I had this baby, and I thought I was going to be able to continue to do that. But when she was born, Grace had some unusual things happening that I didn't understand. She was my first baby. And I have to say, I wasn't really ready for what was going to happen. After I'd had Grace, the first thing that we noticed, which people will be familiar with, is that Grace cried like a cat. And it was a really unique and sometimes quite pretty cry, and people would comment on it. Interestingly, doctors who heard it didn't think that that was unusual, although I do recall one nurse asking me whether or not I'd been taking intravenous drugs because my baby was crying like that. Nonetheless, nobody picked up that something was happening. Grace had reflux, quite bad silent reflux. So I had lots of nights where I was up all night, not knowing what was going on. And we ended up at the pediatrician trying to find out how it was we were going to get her to keep milk down, and I had to put her on formula and special formula. As time went on, she was a bit floppy. She didn't crawl. She sort of dragged her leg along. Visits to the pediatrician and the doctors telling us that everything was fine. As time went on, I just had this feeling that there was something that we might need help with. Grace was drooling excessively. She had a drop jaw laxity. So she'd have a look on her face, and sometimes I'd see it in photos and think that just doesn't look like that's how things should be. Then I started to try to have her take solids, and Grace couldn't swallow. So she would sit with the food in her mouth and she would drool, and I would actually just get frustrated and annoyed at her because she wasn't swallowing. And she was having great difficulty eating solids. By the time she then got to about 2, Grace wasn't talking. And a daughter of mine, I thought, was going to talk and talk a lot. So that kind of bothered me. So we were back to the doctors, and we were told that she was just a late talker. Something that was really interesting that was happening at this time was Grace had started to make up signs. So when Grace wanted to go outside, she would tap her head because she knew she had to put a hat on to go outside. If we were in the pool and I was counting for her to jump in the pool, she would go. So she was making up signs to communicate with us, even though she couldn't talk. Off to the doctors, told she's a late talker, off to a speech therapist, and the speech therapist taught her speech language to try to bring her speech on. And over a lot of years that came. Grace didn't say mum until she was about 4.5. So it took us a long time. Then at that time, when she was around that was about 2.5, and we had speech therapy for years. By the time she was about 3.5 or 4, clearly having difficulty with uncoordination, would trip and fall. It was really difficult to teach Grace to do anything. She also started having some sensory issues. She loved hoods. She loved having things around her head and ears. She loved water. She loved playing with water. She would sit in the pantry next to the Tupperware drawer with water, and she would pour it from Tupperware container to Tupperware container because she just loved playing with water. Then we had an incident where she was quite ill and off to the doctor, very, very protruded tummy. And she was about 4 by this stage, and went for an X-ray because they were so worried about her. Turned out she had chronic constipation, and that was causing difficulties. At this point in time, of course, not able to toilet train Grace, and I became an expert at where every public toilet was on the Sunshine Coast, because we had to get in there really quickly and or use them to clean up what were accidents that we were having often. She was also becoming a little bit quirky and doing a few things that were very different to other children. So back to the pediatrician, and he did a test to see if she was on the spectrum, and she just fell short of being considered to be on the spectrum, which turned out to be really good news, because if they had said that she was on the spectrum, we might have had a different path. At that appointment, I was also told not to worry too much. We're not all going to be Olympians. Your daughter has nothing to worry about. Maybe some of us are going to be Olympians, it turned out. She went to prep, had some difficulties at prep, and early into the prep year, her teacher suggested to me that Grace should repeat prep. I wasn't keen on that happening because no one could tell me what it was that was happening for Grace. Grace couldn't do things like she couldn't sort shapes. She couldn't sort animals into groups. She was having great difficulty, of course, with sight words, played alone a lot, played parallel, did a lot of copying other children. And there were lots of physical activities that she had difficulty with. So I refused to allow her to be to repeat, because I did a lot of research at the time as to whether or not, if she had a disability, was that the right thing to do? Because by this point, I'm thinking, I'm sure that there's something we're going to find. She went into grade 1. Within a couple of weeks of grade 1, I got the conversation, I think she should repeat year 1. I said, well, we've only just started. Can we just give her a shot? I said, right, leave it till the end of the year. Let's see what we can do. Got to the September school holidays this time 13 years ago, and they said she really needs to repeat. She just needs more time. And I said, okay, that's fine. I give in. I give up. You can have her repeat, but only on the condition that we have her tested for everything. I want her eyes tested, her ears tested. I want her to be seen by anyone who can see her, because I'm telling you that there is something that we don't know. Her primary teacher at the time said, I think she should see an OT. And she did go to see the OT then in the couple of weeks following. And I remember this very vividly. It was a Friday afternoon and the OT phoned me. And I apologise, I'll get teary a few times when I talk about this stuff, even 13 years later. And the OT phoned me and she said, what a beautiful daughter I had. At which point I knew that the news wasn't great. And she talked about how funny she was and how lovely she was. But she said, I think you should go and get a genetic test. At that point in time, I recalled having read in the Q Weekend magazine 2 years earlier about a syndrome, Cri du Chat syndrome. When I read that article, I thought, oh, there's bits of that sound a bit like Grace. The language, the swallowing, the uncoordination. But at that time, I recall thinking, I'm pretty sure you can't have a partial chromosomal disorder. So it can't be that. When the OT phoned, I went and Googled Cri du Chat syndrome. It was the first time I had done it. And up came the list of everything that you might see in someone who was missing the top tip of the short arm of the 5th chromosome, which I've got very good at saying. And I have to say, I went into shock. I went into grief. And I realised that was the chromosomal deficiency Grace had. Of course, I'm no expert. or I wasn't at that time. And I then on the Monday morning made an appointment with the GP. What's a very, very short version of a very long 6 weeks. It's a referral and then on to the pediatrician. And the pediatrician, who had seen us 5 or 6 times over the 5 or 6 years, he said, it's not that. It's not, because it presents with an intellectual impairment. And I said, well, lucky for you, a blood test is going to tell us whether or not this is what we've been looking for. At the time, I had a friend who was a pediatrician who said, you can have a blood test that will find akin to a word on a page in a book in a library. It will find it if that's what it is. Then the doctor said, look, I'm also going to send her for an MRI and see if she's had a stroke in vitro. And I said, that's okay, you can do that, but I won't be doing that until we have the results of the blood test, because I'm telling you that this is what is happening for Grace. Again, another 6 weeks later, the pediatrician phoned me and he said he wanted to tell me that I had taught him the first lesson of pediatrics, and that is that mummy is always right. And I said, well, that's awesome, but that's not why I did this. I did this because I would really like to help my daughter. And that was the moment that changed our lives. And I have to say, as difficult as some of this was, it was a change for the better. We then knew how we could help Grace. We then knew the path that we were on. I'd missed lots of things like funding for early intervention and early intervention help, apart from the speech therapy. And then we went on a path of OT. I gave up work because I knew that I needed to be there for Grace, and I knew I could not be there for Grace. And she had a brother who was 4, so I needed to be there for them both. We then went about trying to work out how we were going to navigate the school system and everything else. And these are probably some things that, again, resonate and or perhaps, I hope, some in the room might find helpful. I have to say, at that point, I feel like I have been fighting the entire of Grace's life. I feel like I have fought doctors, and then I have fought school and sporting organisations and theatre organisations, and almost everything that Grace has tried to do, I feel like I fight. And that is because the structures that we have in place in our society aren't made for people with disability, let alone someone who has Cri du Chat syndrome. I'm proud to say that most of those fights are relatively successful. We've got to the end of year 12, touch wood, we've got 2 more assessments left. 1 more assessment left. Grace has, over the years, we got to a point where Grace has support in almost every class that she does. And she has support outside of class to get assessments done and assignments done and exams. We've helped the school and Education Queensland learn what a reasonable adjustment for a child with disability like Grace has might be, because it's different from any other child that they've ever provided adjustments for in this way. They resisted, and this is an important story, and it's one that has made a difference to Grace, and it's actually really, really important in terms of having access to the same things that everybody else has access to. In order to learn and in order to do exams and be assessed in a way that's fair to Grace, she needs not only extra time, and sometimes extra time's bad for her, she needs someone to read it to her. She needs someone to explain the question to her. Then she needs somebody to help drag her answer out of her and help her put it in a way so that somebody else can understand it. And when we do that, we find out Grace has knowledge, and Grace is actually a really clever young woman It just takes a long time and a different pathway for us to get that recognized. Those adjustments, having prompts, being able to be questioned, being able to have help expressing yourself, none of those things were permitted as a reasonable adjustment before the last 2 years, where we have worked with Queensland Education to eventually allow us to have those. And even now, Grace will say, I'm not allowed that in the exam, am I? Yes, you are. And yes, you should have that. So it's been a long journey. Obviously, we have done a lot of sport. One of the things that I decided early on was that we weren't going to, and you'll have to excuse Grace yawning.
Yes.
As a triathlete, she has, we do a lot of 4:30 a.m. mornings. So Grace is often tired, so excuse that, or that she just finds her mother boring, which most 18-year-olds do. So I'll have to up my game. We've done a lot of sport. I decided again early on that therapy wasn't necessarily helpful to Grace. What was helpful to Grace were things like organized sport, where there were social connections that she wasn't going to make otherwise. It was almost like a forced play date. The other thing that happened by sport is that Grace became physically stronger, and her coordination improved, and her relationship with other people improved, and the people around her treated her differently. It got better, because when it came to sport, I have to say, kids get it. Kids get it. We stood at the athletics track, the little athletics track, and she was about 6.5. So it was the season about now when she was diagnosed. And one of the other little girls said, shouldn't we give Grace a head start? Bingo, kids get it. And in any sporting environment that Grace has been in, kids embrace her, and they realize that there are adaptations that need to be made for Grace to be included, and they do it. And they almost do it intuitively. It's the rules, and it's the grown-ups, and it's the structures that say, no, you don't do that. You can't do that, which makes things difficult. We've been on a great journey in multi-class sport, and we both advocate for better opportunities in sport. If it hadn't have been sport, it would have been drama, and we've done a bit of advocacy in that space too, for the opportunities for children like Grace, and children like all of our children, to have opportunities where they are treated fairly and they can have meaningful opportunities. Grace has done plenty of races where she was the only one in the race, which wasn't particularly valuable. Grace has done more races and more events where she was coming last, and she chases people down. From the time I worked out that she could probably do something that involved a little bit of endurance, she's writing notes of things she's going to say, had a little bit of endurance, and she hops on the track and off the starting line, she is at the back, and she is at the back every time. And even now at World Level, she's at the back, and she chases people down. And I say to her, just catch them one at a time. And so that's what Grace has always done, is catch them one at a time. And that has made her a resilient, determined, and fierce competitor. And I think at this point in time, on a path that hopefully will give her some opportunities for a long time to come. And over to Grace so that she can tell you about those opportunities.
Hello. So I've written some notes down here that I just wanted to touch on Mum's talk right there, but I'll do that after my talk. So here I go, I guess. So today I wanted to share my journey to becoming a Paralympian. It's a story about sport, determination, and finding peace in the world. I was born in Nambour and grew up on the Sunshine Coast. I started swimming lessons just at 4 months old, and I joined Little Athletics when I was 5. I was very used to coming last. I was I was always behind. And when the races got longer, my mum taught me just catch them one at a time. At 9, I came second in my school's cross country, and I went to districts for the very first time in the able-bodied team. I came 5th at districts, and I have always made it to regionals in cross country in the mainstream. In my first year at regionals, I came 8th. Over the years, I slipped down. And then I was introduced to the multi-class system. From then, I went to state in the multi-class and won every year. Sunshine Coast Grammar School has been a huge part of my journey. My HPE teacher, Maureen Cummings, saw something in me. She was a champion aquathlete and triathlete, and encouraged me to try aquathon, a mix of swimming and running. I made it to the able-bodied Sunshine Coast Regional Aquathon team 2 years in a row. When I was 10 and 11, when I was 10 and 11, at the stage I wasn't classified, and we had no idea how multi-class sport worked. But even after I was classified in triathlon, I made the Sunshine Coast able-bodied regional team every year since I was 12. I was in my first state triathlon at the Queensland Schools Championships. I rode the entire 10K on a flat tire. I do remember this because my coach met me first, saw me do that, and thought, oh, she's got the willingness to win, which is a good thing in sport. And I didn't know what to do then, so I just kept riding, and I didn't want to miss the run because I had done so much training. I went from last off the bike to passing more than 10 athletes in the run. There were people watching who ended up, my coach ended up watching me do that and has helped me become a Paralympian. I trained with Sunshine Coast Triathlon Academy under Toby Coote, and my brother and I started training with Toby in triathlon for 3 years now, after being coached by my mum. Now I train 10 to 12 sessions a week. We usually do 2 sessions a day, about 20 hours a week, but it's intense and I love it. Seeming I'm yawning so much. Triathlon combines 3 sports I enjoy: swimming, cycling, and running. My favorite leg of the triathlon is swimming. Swimming has been a huge part of my life. I train with Charles Barry at Sunshine Coast Grammar School, and I am part of the Flippers Australian Development Squad. I've won gold in the 400 freestyle at the Australian Age Swimming Championships for the last few years. I also do the 50, 100, 200 freestyle, and recently managed to work on my butterfly so I can do the individual medley. I'm classified as an S9 swimmer and have been looking forward to representing Australia in both swimming and triathlon in LA 2028 and soon before. I was diagnosed with Cri du Chat syndrome when I was 6.5. It affects my coordination, speech, motor skills, and learning. There have been lots of things in my life that have been taken a little bit more time and effort for me than most people. I graduate year 12 next month. I have managed to stay in a mainstream school for the whole of my schooling. I repeated grade 1, like Mum said. I have also I have constant learning support and adjustments. I have just got my first part-time job this year, and at the local IGA. I juice oranges, and I hope to move on to working on the registers. I hope I can go to uni and study criminology. Sport has been great for me. I've tried gymnastics, dancing, netball, skiing, touch football, water polo, horse riding, and of course, swimming and running. Cycling is a bit tricky. I learned to ride a bike very early because I didn't have much fear, and I still don't. I have had a few stitches in my time. Now I have someone with me to ride on the road. And my mum and brother used to ride with me, and I was still learning to ride on the road. I was still learning to ride a road bike. I have bad balance and I have to hold on very tight to stay on the bike. And I have had trouble braking and changing gears, but I've managed to train really hard, and I can now go down some of the hills that I train at more than 70k an hour. My mum is in her 50s. Doing triathlon courses can be hard. We do lots of things to try and make sure I know where to go and how many laps there are of each leg. I've had to work out ways of remembering how many laps and where to go. I have most people at various places on the course to help me and make sure I don't make mistakes. Sometimes that's not possible, and I get DQ'd, disqualified. It happened in my first overseas race in Montreal. It happened to me at the Paralympics. I have been DQ'd in swimming too for incorrect leg use, not doing the turns right, and also most of the swimming rules. I often get the lap counting wrong, but I just keep going and keep trying to find ways to limit things going wrong. Only last weekend I did a triathlon and got lost in transition only once. Sorry, it says both times here. But I love sport and I love racing.
Let's go down to uni.
Now I'm focused on LA 2028 and Brisbane 2032. It is my hope and that is what I hope for my future. Triathlon, swimming, and talking to people outside of sport. I'm interested in psychology, film, music, acting, but now my priority is sport. I've always believed that my disability doesn't define ability. I want to show the world that inclusion isn't just about being invited. It's being part of the race. Now, on my mum's speech, I made some few notes. Yes, I have been told off for my sensory problems before. I was actually told off, if I'm remembering correctly, in grade 6. I used to wear 2 jumpers to school because it was just comfy. And I actually got told off for that. Good now that I only wear 1 jumper in summer, but yeah. And my relationships with other people. A few days ago, one of my friends from triathlon came up to me and said, if I don't get this right, don't like hate on me or anything. And she said, do you have, if I'm correct, do you have CP? And I was like, no, I have Cri du Chat syndrome. And so I talked her through that a lot of people actually misunderstand my disability. And I had to explain to her how it affects me and what Cri du Chat is. So my talking stages, yes, I can talk now, but I used to really struggle, like Mum said. Now I'm at the stage of talking where I can just sit and yap people's heads off, which isn't necessarily a good thing. I've been surrounded by able-bodied people my whole life. I always wanted to be normal, tried to fit in, and I still am, to be honest. And I've had various trouble with my friends and in communicating, and I've actually lost a couple of friends to me communicating as well. But I have very good friends now who say, all right, Grace, what do you mean by that? Can you elaborate? What is it you try to say? And actually understand some of the really random sentences that I say, which is so good. And like my friend that said, oh, do you have CP? Most of my friends actually don't know what Cri du Chat is, so I had to explain to them. And a few of my friends have said over the years that I've been friends with them, they've said, okay, Grace, what's your disability? Because I heard people say this and that and this, but it normally I have to explain what it actually is, but some of them, all of them get it. And the people who I'm really close to actually understand it, but not as much as the people who I've grown up. My brother understands it, my mum understands it, my coach is getting there with understanding it, another coach understood it, a couple of my friends are starting to understand it. Yeah.
I think they get it.
Yeah. Thank you, and hopefully you have a good day.
Good girl. Thank you very much. You stand up. So I think we're going to try for some questions. Come on in so they can still see you on the film.
Thank you, guys. Any questions come from the audience here?
So thank you for sharing. Cri? Can you stand over here? She can see you better.
Stand over here, should we see?
You say thank you for sharing. Cri?
We might have lost some sound. We can't hear.
Sorry.
Can you
hear
us now?
We can hear you, yeah.
So thank you for sharing. You've achieved a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Pleasure.
What do you want to ask? Honey, do you have a question?
Any questions, guys?
Come up here?
There's a chance. Yes, Wade, what would you like to ask? So ask the computer.
You have to stand in front of the computer.
How old are you?
I'm 18.
There you go,
And
18.
your mum?
Me. I'm 54. Don't I look amazing for 54?
Yes, Helen?
Helen, did you want to come over here? Helen, did you want to come stand in front, just so they can see you?
So
You just stand in, sorry, if you stand in front of it, just so they can see and hear you.
hello, I'm Helen,
Hi,
mother of Honey. You said S9 Paralympics. So what's the difference between what is S9, the levels, and in terms of Paralympics and Special Olympics, what's the difference?
So I can answer the Special Olympics and the Olympics one. So the Paralympics is people with disabilities who are amazing and should be in the Olympics but aren't. But Paralympics means parallel to the Olympics. So I've actually done some research myself on it, and because I didn't understand it. The Paralympics was back way back. Was actually for injured war people, and so they would get injured in war and they would be in wheelchairs and have a leg cut off, have an arm or whatever it was. Some people actually suffered really bad from it, and so they created this Olympics that they could go to and create races and compete so they didn't feel left out.
And the Special Olympics, so I'll fill in some of the technical, the Special Olympics is only intellectual impairment. And so all of the events that take place there are for people with intellectual impairment. They might have other impairments, but primarily intellectual impairment. And whilst if you have an intellectual impairment, you can still go to the Paralympics in particular classifications in particular sports. Just to put it in perspective, Grace, to have an intellectual impairment to go to the Paralympics or to go to the Special Olympics, it's a test of an IQ of under 75. And that's it. And they all compete against one another. In relation to the classification system, very quick rundown of a very complex system. S9 is a swimming classification. So every sport has a different system. In swimming, there are now 19 separate classes or classifications. 1 to 10 are physical impairments, and you're classified for physical impairments. The most significant impairment is an S1, and the least impaired is an S10. So Grace is considered to be at the lesser impaired end of that scale. She used to be an S8 and then they put her in S9. Alexa Leary is an S9. There's lots of talk about the classification system and whether or not it successfully places people into fair categories, and there's a lot of work to be done. One of the things about the classification system in any sport is that if you have 2 different types of impairment, so for Grace, for example, she has physical, which is coordination and muscle power, and she has cognitive impairment. So it's, whilst not intellectually impaired, has difficulty with processing and of course following courses and counting laps. The cognitive impairment for Grace does not get taken into account in her classification at all. So she will race in the S9 against somebody who perhaps is a lower limb amputee and they have no cognitive impairment and they race against one another. In triathlon, Grace is a PTS 5. In triathlon, there's 1 to 5 and then wheelchair and then 2 to 5. 5 being the least impaired. Grace has been classed up over the years from a 2 to a 3 to a 4 to a 5 as she gets better. And currently the people she races have generally, they are missing a forearm. That's their impairment. So we're not altogether satisfied that it's a fair fight, but that's what we've got. So does that help?
Yeah, that was great. Any other questions, guys? Yeah, Dylan.
Hey Grace,
Hey,
congratulations on your achievement so far, and thank you for sharing your story.
thanks.
You speak really well, so I just wanted to get a bit of an understanding of how you developed your speech and how you've gotten where you started to where you are now.
So, uh, good question.
Okay, so it's a fabulous question, and thank you so much for noticing. So Grace we started speech and drama when she was in grade 1 or 2.
Great.
I come from a bit of a drama background, and we thought that rather than speech therapy, that being involved in drama, a bit like sport, would have her immersed in the environment and learn some things. And the other thing that happened was when she was in grade 2, her teacher came and said, in terms of learning and in terms of understanding what Grace knew, she called me to class one day to watch the class performance. And Grace was actually amazing. She was pretending to be a crocodile, and she nailed it. But her understanding of so many things was demonstrated so much better by her performing. And the teacher had worked out that she was a really kinesthetic learner, and that performing and being immersed in environment helped her understanding. So we put her in that environment all the time. And then she, until maybe 3 years ago, we would do things like go to the Eisteddfods, and we would learn pieces, we would learn speeches and poems, and she would practice them and she would perform them. And she's actually turned out loving performing, and loving appearing before people. She volunteers at school now to do their sports performance talks for the other students.
Love public speaking. It's literally a hobby of mine.
Yeah, so long journey, lots of tears. The one of the stories is sitting on the floor of the holiday house when she was in prep, and I said, we're not getting off this floor till you can say the word not. And we sat there for a very long time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, guys? No?
Hang on. One quick one from
Right, hang on. Bryce has got a question. Chase, ask it.
Hi, Grace. I'm Kaylee's mum. Bryce, Kaylee's brother, wanted to ask if you're also pursuing the Commonwealth Games.
What?
Com Games. You going to the Commonwealth Games?
Very,
No triathlon.
yeah, very interesting story. The Com Games is only for a certain number of sports. Now, they decided that last year. And triathlon isn't a part of the Com Games now. And my main event, the 400, is not part of the Com Games. And the 100 is, and the 100 time is 10 seconds faster than my time. So unfortunately, it is not in my goals. Yeah.
Good job.
That's great. All right. Any final questions, guys? Going once, twice, stop. All right. Just want to say, Grace and Simone, thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to you. I can say that at least our family, when we saw your name on the list for the Paralympics, we saw your disability there. Shay's eyes lit up. She ran into the room and said, "Someone, we need to watch this." She let it out to the whole group. You have a room full of supporters here. We are following you very, very closely. I can say all the people at my work, in my golf groups, they're all asking, how's she going? How'd she go? We lived through that devastation of the Paralympics. We were in tears. We were there for that.
Us too.
Every moment of it, and you did fantastic. It was absolutely amazing. Running that extra lap, doing all the extra stuff that you did. They can go get stuff. You're a hero. So, well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do you want to say bye, Kaylee, and then we'll go? Say bye.
Bye, Kaylee.
Thanks.
Thanks, Shay.
Thanks. We'll see you later.
Yeah.
Like to start some dance right next door.